Hello everybody, today another video in a section on the channel I think I'm going to have to entitle Weird and Wafty, although I'm not sure yet if that sounds like a Soho nightclub or a sitcom from the 1980s. This is a Nissan President, and if you're currently sat at home going, what the hell is that? You would be entirely forgiven. The President is Nissan's top-flight luxury saloon, their alternative to the Mercedes S-Class, the BMW 7 Series, and perhaps more importantly, the Toyota Century. Like many cars of its type, there weren't many generations in the President lineage. They took it all the way from the mid-60s until about 2010, and by the end of its life it was an extremely rare car. Apparently Nissan sold something like 60 of them in 2009. Indeed, they only sold 50 and a bit thousand cars over its sort of half-century production run. A lot of cars I've driven have clearly one seat very much in mind. Usually that's this one, but not the President. Oh no, this car is designed exclusively for the gentleman or woman sat over there. To give you an idea of just what I mean, that is the only door with soft close on it. It also has a grab handle on it, unlike any of the other entry points, so you can get in and out of this car with some dignity even in your advancing years. This is the lesser spotted four-seater version of the President, and in the back you've got a nice center console which features all the controls you'd want for the infotainment and the seats, including the passenger seat in front of you. That also has a little sort of ski hatch designed for your feet, so if you do want to rest and relax, this is a very good place to do it in. As is typical with Japanese domestic market vehicles, this is a very unusual looking thing. There are shades of 1950s retro Americana about it, despite the fact this car actually rolled off the production line in 2004. The interior is again luxurious by Japanese car standards. No Mercedes S-Class would be kept up at night thinking about what the President would do to its sales. The buttons are pretty familiar to anyone that's got a Nissan from the time, although some of them are just a little bit nicer. There is leather and real wood in here. The rear also appears to be, well, pretty much a nightclub back there. The tints are as this car came over from Japan, imported by its owner Brad, who's kindly brought it to me today. Up front you have the one and only choice of engine and gearbox for this car. A 4.5 litre V8 paired with an automatic gearbox that has some speeds in it. 5 of them, I believe. Curiously, of all the cars which received this engine, this has the lowest power output of the lot. It makes a claimed 276 brake horsepower, the exact same as all the cars from the era of the Japanese gentleman's agreement. That tells you probably more about what they wanted this car to be. It was never a performance car. That wasn't anywhere in the design remit. This is supposed to be smooth, comfortable and luxurious for Mr. Man in the back there, or Mrs. Lady, I suppose. And to be fair, it does a very good job of doing that. It is very plush riding, and this week I've spent quite a bit of time in some very nicely damped cars, the Audi S8 and indeed the Citroen C6. I would say of all the three, this is the one that is the least sporting. Despite the fact it is a saloon, you feel very high up in here. You've got a pretty commanding view of the road. The black paintwork with plenty of chrome on the outside really does feel like a throwback to an age that's long since gone. If you want to buy yourself one of these, then good luck, because there are not many around. In fact, when I was doing my research, I saw that there was only one for sale. That was up for about £14,000, although this car's owner, who has imported a few, thinks that could perhaps be a little bit strong. About £10,000, he reckons, should normally get you into one of these, but do be prepared to import it yourself if there's something specific you have in mind. It's not double glazed, but the glass in the doors is very thick, and so it's a pretty serene place to be. The interior does have some features which I suppose are unique to the President, or at least it and the Shimmer, which it shares a platform with. The dials down here are very reminiscent of the Mercedes S-Class of the time, and very classy. When the car's off, you cannot see them at all. The little screen in the centre here is comically out of date now, and wasn't exactly cutting edge when this car came out, but if you press the little button, it will rise up and give you even more information. There's also a little drop-down screen in the back which can either mirror that information, or play a DVD so your CEO can be kept nice and happy in there. The throttle requires a fairly hefty prod to get the car moving, but get it moving it does. And as is typical for all vehicles of this kind, it's a very nice thing to drive around town. I absolutely adore the combination of big, naturally aspirated engine with torque converter auto. I've spoken about it a lot in a number of videos, and the fact is, it just works. Now, it isn't the quickest, sportiest, or most efficient way to get about, but it is just a really smooth way of doing things. You have radar-guided cruise control, which is quite impressive to see. You've also got a built-in toll tag card reader here for your Japanese roads. There's also a sporty mode for the suspension, which I may try out in a little bit. You're told very plainly that all of the windows are automatic, which is nice. There's actually a power and a snow mode for the gearbox too. The rear does have blinds all round. The ones on the windows are manual, but the one at the back can be operated from here. It is an ideal car to take the family out in, especially grandma, who can feel like a queen back there. And you've got decent boot space. It's not ridiculously large. Most cars like this have the same problem because they've got so much legroom in the back, the boot is what suffers. However, it is very wide, so you can actually get more in there than you might think. As you often get with many Japanese domestic market cars, this also has its very own badging. At the front you've got a, I don't even know what it is, it's a seashell or something. And I'm told driving around in a nice blacked out car with the word President on the back does earn you more than a few casual glances. As you might imagine, it's the seats in the back which are by far the best. The ones in the front aren't bad. They're not really very supportive if you want to do any, getaway driving, but they are very comfortable. Heated too, I think. There's electric memory. You've got folding wing mirrors, and we have to remind ourselves that this was 15 years ago. These were not standard features on a lot of cars. When you do put your foot down, there is simply the faint rumble of V8 in the distant background, just enough to let you know that there is something meaty up front, but not enough to wake Mr. Yamada. Even in the sporty suspension mode, it's still a fairly wafty and floaty car, and this is not the thing that it wants to be doing. I'm driving these roads at what in many cars will be sort of 6 or 7 tenths, and I can tell that's enough for this. But that's fine. That's not really the kind of driving you're supposed to be doing in a car like this. Nor is it, to be honest, especially enjoyable. So suspension goes back into auto, and gearbox does the same. Brakes are fighting me just a little bit. They got a touch of a wobble on them, but I'm sure it's something easily remedied. The steering actually is fairly direct, if somewhat slow. Something like a Jaguar XJ, a BMW 7 Series, or an Audi A8 is going to be a much sportier car. But those also come at the sacrifice of a little bit of luxury. They may be by most standards pretty plush and soft. This is simply next level. You can tell that this is designed really for urban roads. It's not meant to be tootling down a country road at any pace. This is designed to get you from one side of Tokyo to the other. And I think it'll be excellent at that job. I have yet to drive the Toyota Century, which at this time still had a V12 up front. However, in many ways it was also a much more traditional vehicle, one could say, or out of date, perhaps others might. There's quite a few JDM cars that people have brought me which in truth feel like something you could easily pick up here for the same if not less money. However, there is genuinely something quite different about the President. I'm not entirely sure what kind of person would want to buy it, other than Brad of course, but if you do, you are going to get yourself something very comfortable, very different, luxurious in its own way, and quite special, actually. This is an oddball car, but I think I'd probably rather have one of these than another old S-Class. It is cool. So there we have it. That is the Nissan President. Hopefully now you know a little bit more about a car you may never have heard of before. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.